Hello, my name is Noel Bell. I'm a psychotherapist based in London, and this is a podcast on immortality. And I am really thrilled to be joined all the way from India from Dr. Shelley Astrof. Shelley, good evening where you are. How are you doing today?
I am absolutely excellent, and I'm so happy and excited to be here and to talk to you.
It's really good to have you. Now, we have a mutual friend, Himali Vora, who was the editor of Sacred Death, 25 Tools for Caregivers, that book. And
Yes.
you have a chapter in there, Immortality is Your True Home, Meditation on the Knower. Can you get there? So we will be discussing that. Just give us a brief outline of your bio details, briefly where you're based, and maybe some of the stuff you've published before, just to set us in context.
All right. I started out as a teacher and using meditation as a basis. I kind of stumbled across it by accident. And then I wrote a book on for children called the Knower Curriculum. And what it is, it's teaching meditation, yoga, pranayama, like breath exercises, mantra, which are sound exercises, and the physical exercises, which are hatha yoga. So it's using those activities, those kind of yogic activities, along with schooly kind of activities for children, but I also used it for adults. And all those topics are on the background of these stories I call timeless tales, because they're ancient stories from India that are made quite modern and very relevant today. So that was like my first way of getting into meditation. And I have a book called Timeless Tales, which are all the stories. And so it's a coloring book for the children and a kind of read along with an audio book. And I was also in another book called from Laura DeFranco. She was the lead author, and I wrote a chapter called Simple Meditation for your body, to heal your body and mind. And that book was called The Ultimate Guide to Health and Wellness, I think. Oh, I have to look that up.
Yeah, that's fine.
It was quite a few years ago. Yeah. And then Himali invited me to, she was the lead author on Sacred Death. And she wanted many, many different perspectives. And because I teach meditation and have a background in Vedanta philosophy and the Bhagavad Gita, she wanted that perspective. She's quite a brilliant person. And when she decided to put this together, she wanted to have, you could say, a broad spectrum from all different ways of looking at death, because she felt something would resonate with a lot of different people. So that's how I came to be involved in her book, because it's normally not my topic.
Yes, because when I did the podcast with her and Jerry Barnes, we were talking about death cafes, so we don't need to revisit the questions around the death cafes with you. So just looking at the chapter, Shelley, and I reread it again this morning and loved the chapter, talking about, the reference with your grandmother, that you know, you felt safe and home being where the heart is. But let's just talk about some of the benefits you get from meditation, because what you're saying essentially in this story, in this chapter, is that one can connect with your immortal home through meditation on the knower, and
Yes.
the knower being your immortal soul. Do you want to just tell us more about how meditation can access the knower for you?
Okay, absolutely. No, it's my favorite topic.
Good.
The kind of meditation that that I teach and that I prescribe is a meditation that delivers, you could say, that sense of freedom within. And so what I do, or what I've learned, is that to separate all that changes in your life with what doesn't change. So if you were to think of yourself when you were 2, 3, 4 years old, and if somebody showed you a picture, and they showed you like maybe a class picture with all your little buddies, you would know which one is you. You would not think that was you. You would know that was you. And then if you would see yourself, remember yourself at 10 years old, 15, like throughout your life, you would know that you have no doubt about that. So in Sanskrit, the word for knower, there are many words. There's Atma and Chaitan and Turiya, but to use it in English, which doesn't have that, the word knower is the one that knows, there's no doubt. So when you think about yourself as being a person who was 3 years old, 5 years old, 10, 12, and so on, the body of that person is not the same.
Mm-hmm.
Your hair has been cut so many times, there's probably not a strand that's the same from when you were a child. Your nails have been cut, your cells have changed. So what is it, if all of those changes are happening, what knows throughout that it's you?
Yeah.
And whatever knows throughout that it's you has not changed.
Yeah.
The one that knows. So this isn't any kind of religion. It's not any kind of belief. It's knowing only for yourself. It's not knowing for anyone else. It's not convincing anyone else. It's extremely, extremely personal. So whatever knows throughout your life that that's you is, when you meditate, what happens is you see that your mind changes, your body changes, your thoughts change, your situations and circumstance changes. But what knows the changes? What is it that's observing the changes? And when you close your eyes and you allow your senses to quiet down, so you're not seeing outwardly, slowly, slowly, you just let down, maybe a thought, breath, mantra that would resonate with who is it. But if you keep watching, who is it that's watching? That is you, and you strengthen that sense of you. Now, the mind is like a camera. So it receives, like the mind receives all its information from the senses. We have 5 senses, and mind absorbs all its information from there. But the mind itself is a sense. So the thing about it being like a camera is that a camera can't know beyond itself, meaning the camera can't know the photographer. It can't know who's taking the picture. The mind can't know who's behind it looking through. So when you meditate and you get in touch with that sense of knower, sense of your own self, so when you open your eyes, what begins to happen is that that instead of the mind only being attracted to what's in front of it, like if you hear a sound or you see something exciting, the mind will always go there wherever the attention is. But as you meditate and you become more absorbed in your originality, which I'm calling the knower as a word, what happens is if you think of a cloth and you dip a cloth in dye and then you take it out, and then you dip it again in dye and you take it out, each time you dip it in the dye, it becomes more rich in its color, and you keep dipping it. So as the mind gets dipped in the dye of its own originality, of its own knower, it's nobody else's, it's only you. That is when you strengthen the one who's behind the camera. And so instead of deciding that something in front of you is so exciting to see, but your inner being is knowing, well, maybe I shouldn't be late for my class, or maybe I should get to work, rather than seeing this exciting thing that's happening, you start to become more focused on your own well-being, which is what the knower is. It is your own well-being.
Yeah.
And it's only about you.
So this cuts to the chase, I think, in terms of life and death. The question which you pose in the chapter, anyway, one of a number of questions, when birth and death is on your mind, you pose the question, does life die when the body is dead? Because I say it cuts to the chase, because those who have belief in an afterlife or believe in the migration of the soul, that there's an onward journey, that conflicts very much with the atheist secular view, right? That when the body dies, essentially that's the end of it.
Well, I mean, you see, that's also true, because when the body dies, that is the end of it.
Yeah.
It's the end of the body. But if you take the point of view that, say you take the point of view that the knower is first, not the body, and that the body becomes developed like a seed. Like if you, like say you have a peacock egg. In that peacock egg are all the colors of all the feathers in potential form. It's not the peacock that you see, but you know that every egg laid by every peacock in potential form will have all those colors, will all have all those qualities. So if you take the point of view rather than you have a body first and the soul enters it. And the soul isn't coming from anywhere. What if, see, English doesn't have all those words. So what if there is this state of consciousness that wants to express and body gets created out of that? If soul is first, if knower is first, because that's what you're knowing. And then the development of the body, mind, senses, and everything that comes with that changes. So you could say when a tree is a sapling, you could say a tree is born. And then when the tree becomes firewood, the tree dies. So the body absolutely is born and absolutely dies, because form begins and form ends. But what is it that watches all of that? And it's not God that is somewhere different from you. I'm absolutely not saying that at all. I'm saying it's all you.
So
You.
yes, no, actually, it's probably a good time to. Could you give us what your definition is of God?
Yes, I would define God as that consciousness that doesn't change, that is immortal. Like when I was in my first year of high school, in my general science class, my teacher came in and he said, matter is not created or destroyed. It only changes. And that's called the law of conservation. Now, where does that come from? Matter is only, it's not created. It only changes form. So my definition of what I would call God would be that sense that is watching, observing, and knowing the creation, the change, the dissolution, and the creation again, and change and dissolution. So from the point of view of the knower, there is no reincarnation because there's no incarnation.
Mm-hmm.
It's just appearance of form. And the purpose behind it is to know who it is, because one alone, you can't know who you are. Like you don't know what you look like unless somebody shows a mirror.
Yeah.
So in order to know yourself, you take form. And that's the game.
Yeah. So we don't want to get sidetracked on God, but could God for you be your higher self?
Yes.
It's not necessarily an external agency and a creationist.
It's absolutely not external.
Yeah.
It's absolutely yourself. Yes.
Yeah. So I take it as read then that's it, not deity and
well, you can use deity also, but it's still you. It's all that you are.
yeah.
Because think about like when a person dies and a loved one dies, and there's something that people know. So, for example, a loved one dies, and why do they burn or bury it? Why don't they just keep it sitting in the living room? something they know, that the form isn't them. Like when my parents in their turn died, I didn't think that, my mother's I should put her on a sweater because she's going to be cold in the ground. I knew that wasn't all of who she was. I knew the love that my parents had for me didn't die. I knew that. And that's personal.
Yeah.
I knew their body died, and I would miss their presence and their talks and my sense of being with them. That would not be anymore. But their being was not what was in the ground. Only their body was in the ground.
Because we talked just before we recorded, and I was listening to someone recently talk about apparently scientifically it's irrefutable that we evolved from apes. Therefore, the question is, when did the soul get added, this knowing? And, was it like a gin and tonic at a certain point? So that begs the question, do animals have soul and this inner knowing?
So, well, think about it like all life. Like you're talking about soul as being very individual. In Sanskrit, they have like all these wonderful words for that state. So like if you were to talk to an Inuit who lives in the north of Canada, the North Pole, they would have zillions of words for snow. But if you lived in a country that didn't have snow, you probably have like 1, 2, 3 words. In India, they have zillions of words for what we have one word for, God, or 2 words, God and soul. So say Atma is that sense of self that every being in existence has, whatever existence it is. And then they add the word Jeev, which means individual. So then they call it Jivatma. So it has a very different flavor from God and soul. Yeah. It's really that unity state of consciousness, that sense of life that pulsates through the universe. And then you say Jeev, which means individual. That is what it is.
Yeah, that's very nice. That's beautiful.
So the evolution of the form, of course, will happen. One doesn't have to negate the other, in my point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you talk a little bit about the? I think it's easier for me to pronounce song celestial rather than, is it Bhagavad Gita?
Bhagavad Gita, yes. It's one of my favorite scriptures, and what it is, it's a story. It's definitely a story, and you could call it a dialogue between Krishna, who I will say is that knower state of consciousness, that Atma, that sense of self, that sense of life, or the higher self, speaking to Arjun, who is the other character who takes on the personification of his own mind, his own individuality. And they find themselves in a very precarious situation. Arjun had like this big fight with his family, he and his brothers. It's a big, long story. But here he is now on the battlefield. He and his brothers, there are 5 of them, with their armies, and they're arrayed against their cousins who have their own army. And Arjun is sitting on the battlefield with Krishna, who is that knower state of consciousness, you could say. And what happens is Arjun, the mind, says, I want you to take me to the battlefield and I want you to show me what I'm up against. So he's seeing his, you could say, opposition. And then he sees it's his grandpa and his uncles and his cousins, and he just goes, no, I can't believe I got myself in this situation. And the Bhagavad Gita is that higher self instructing the mind on how to know that you have to be that sense of enlightenment and know that it's all you.
So in a sense, it's a guidebook.
It's completely a guidebook.
Yeah, to access your immortal soul.
Exactly. It's the story is great because I love stories, but to study it and to dive inside of the Gita really does that. And the other absolutely amazing thing about it, it's called the Song Celestial because it was sung. The author, his name was Ved Vyas, and he had organized all the Vedas, and he wanted to write a story about his family. And so he went and asked, and he had what they call Ganesh. He became his scribe. He was like that elephant-headed god. It's just fun stories, but he was to be the scribe. And so Ved Vyas, it's a song. He sings it. So the entire 700 verses, 18 chapters, and it's only a book in the Mahabharata, which is 100,000 stanzas. It's a song. And the thing about the Gita, it's said that if you repeat it in Sanskrit, knowing its meaning, each verse is a mantra. So itself creates the vibration inside that you resonate with your knower state, your true self, your Atma, whatever words you want to use for it. But it's all only about self. That's it.
Yeah, those sounds great. And we're having a little bit of instability on the connection. I hope people will get to hear all of this. Shelley, your chapter in Sacred Death book contains 3 tools.
Yes.
To help enhance one's experience of this knower state of consciousness. Can you just talk to those resources? So there's a visualization of the original home of an earthen cup, the knower meditation, and then the
guided meditation.
Yeah, the third one. So,
and then a Gita verse. Yes. So the first one, it's written in the book, but on my website, on the resources page, I have an audio for each one.
Uh-huh.
So, in India, there are many chai shops, like tea stalls, that you can get tea in these earthen pots. They're these unglazed, the tea in those are absolutely delicious. So you drink it and then it's smashed into the pile of clay. And then, so I was trying to show how the earth is like the element earth is, or like the clay. The potter would take a handful of clay and he would shape each cup individually in its own way. So each cup had its own shape. Each cup would have its own experience, like whether it got milky chai or sweet chai or spicy chai. So each one would have that own creation, but every cup was earth.
Yeah.
So on the level of the cup, when the cup is smashed, because they don't wash them, they actually they crush them back into the clay. And then when they reform them, they're put in the kiln, so they're all fresh. So which part of the clay cup is not earth?
Because the earthen cup has experiences and lives out its time as the human form does.
Yes. So if you take the point of view of the earth as the element that is before the cup is formed, so you would say that the cup is born, like maybe the gestation is when the potter is making its form, and maybe it's born when it comes out of the kiln, and it has its life cycle of being drunk from or being a flower pot. And then when it goes back to the earth or the clay, like which part of it was even though each one was individual, but which part of it was not earth?
Yeah.
And all of it was earth. So what is created and destroyed is form. That's my point.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and that's the first one.
Yeah.
Then the second one is the knower meditation.
Yes. I guide the listener to just sit back and listen to the meditation and just relax and watch thoughts that come and thoughts that go. So you could say a thought is born, lives out its life, and vanishes. But if you just watch your thoughts as if they were clouds and you were the sky.
And
the sky.
That's lovely, because often people who start meditation think they should get to a state of peace and bliss, of not having thoughts, which is almost impossible, right?
It's not almost impossible. It is impossible.
It is impossible, yeah.
Yeah, and that isn't the point, because you want to, my complete understanding of having studied this process for well over 40 years is that you want to make the mind smarter, sharper, more focused. You want your eyes to be better, your ears to be better. Meditation on the knower does that. You don't want to make yourself more dull. You want to make yourself more sharp. And your own well-being is your own well-being. And that's going to, I mean, you're not out of sync with your mind, because what you're doing is not getting lost in the kind of noise of thoughts that bring you down.
Yeah.
You're not sort of lost in something like headlines that capture your attention and make you feel bad. You actually, the more you meditate, the more you have your finger on the remote.
Yes, and this, I mean, this should be packaged, right? And governments for public health policies should be packaging this, right?
I would say so, because this has nothing to do with religion. It only has to do with each individual human being who has that ability.
Yes.
To be their own best self. It's nothing more than that. And it's knowing that every other being, to honor that self within. We're saying within, without, it can't be separate from you. It's like saying, you know, my toes are different from my fingers, or I can be a daughter and a sister and a wife and a mother all at the same time.
But today's generation with social media and the internet and attachment to devices generally have the attention span of a wild monkey. I mean, how do you get people to put their devices down and actually embrace nowness and present momentness?
I absolutely don't, because I think that technology is fabulous. First off, I do a mini meditation every week on Facebook that goes to my YouTube channel.
Oh, fantastic.
But because of social media, because of these devices, people can interact like you and I. We're on different parts of the planet.
Yeah.
I think that we can actually take everything that's at our disposal and make it work for us. There's everything that's coming. It's, if you see that it can work for you, not against you. These are your blessings.
Yes.
Count them.
And absolutely. And when people talk about the negative effects of screen time, there's often a lack of nuance in that, because there's one thing passively scrolling a load of garbage on the internet versus screen time where it involves useful engagement with an online group, with a incredibly informative lecture or a really inspiring film. That's very different to the passive scrolling that you get with social media, right?
Exactly. But then when you think about like pre-internet times that I grew up in, it's not that all my high school friends were so enlightened. We were just a bunch of dumb kids, just in the neighborhood being dumb kids. And and we had to find it only from like the physical areas. We didn't have, I mean, the most we could have is a telephone call in person from somebody from far away. So I think social media is amazing, but everything, if it's used in the way that's correct to enlighten and evolve yourself to like making yourself smarter, I say like fantastic.
Yeah. Is it enhancing or taking away from your life? And that's the basic rule of thumb, right?
Yes. And I know, like, I just watch teenagers. They go through their teenage years but eventually they stumble across things, and who knows? Who knows what's waiting for them? But because these opportunities are there, I wouldn't shut anything out, because whatever's there is useful.
So the third of the tools is the Gita.
Yes.
And this is to create an atmosphere of peace, unity, and highest awareness.
Yes. That particular verse is one of my favorites. And in Sanskrit, it goes, Dehi no asmin yata dehi komaram yovanam jara tata dehantara praptir tiras tatra namuhyati. And
beautiful.
I spent years on pronunciation, but that was my path. But what it means is the Dehana is that indweller, the indweller self within. So the indweller self, it says, is forever unchanging, even after the body meets its end, or even before. Mm-hmm. And it says, but while that indweller, while dwelling in the body, it witnesses childhood, youth, and old age. And the one who knows this is wise.
Yeah. The wisdom to know the difference between what's that?
What changes.
Be granted the serenity to accept the things you cannot change, the courage to change the things you can, but the wisdom to know the difference.
Yes. And the one who knows the difference is you. I'll take it that one more step.
Yeah.
Because who knows the difference? It's you. It's all of you, because you can't know without your body, mind, senses. So all of you is extremely important.
Yeah. It's been incredibly thought-provoking. I'm sure people will be wanting to know more about your meditations. Where can they find you, Shelley?
My website is knower, KNOWER.ca, or you could find it through knowermeditation.com. And I have on Facebook, Knower Meditation on Facebook, and same on YouTube and Instagram. So
you're well connected.
There you go. I have a son who's savvy on the internet.
Fantastic.
I'm not so good.
I've really enjoyed our chat. I'm sure there'll be another angle that we might chat again. Is there anything you'd like to add, or anything we haven't covered that you thought I might ask that I didn't?
Well, one thing I would like to add, and that is something that my teacher told me, and he said, you don't give up anything. You just add meditation. Who you are is fine. You don't give up your husband, your wife, your parents, your money, your children, your grandparents, your beliefs. You add meditation, and your own well-being will guide you.
That is really very I'm looking for a better adjective than amazing, because often take recovery from addictions. Once the mind is concentrating on what it's missing, what it's given up, rather than what you've added from the abstinence, then it's tricky to maintain the abstinence. Whereas if you think, what are you getting? What are you adding to your life? So a new habit, a new passion, a new hobby if
Yes,
that's the focus rather than the emphasis on what you're trying to give up.
right. Because what happens is that all those thoughts and ideas slowly and slowly that make you ignorant, like, that get you into trouble, those begin to leave all by themselves, because you've added your own well-being, because that's what you want. And slowly and slowly, it doesn't happen all at once, but it happens slowly and slowly as you keep dipping the cloth in the dye.
Yeah.
And it takes on that color. So you just become more and more yourself. You don't become anybody else. You use your own mind, your facilities, your everything.
But the simplicity of that can often be lost on people, right?
I know, because that's mine. Mine loves to complicate it.
Yeah.
An entire 700 verses in the Gita is telling him that. Like, get it together. And the really cute thing about cute, is that Arjun is the mind is the warrior, and the one driving the chariot is Krishna, is your own self. So if you let your own self be the driver, you'll do really well.
Yes. It is really, it's very simple, isn't it? But the mind complicates.
It's so simple that it's overlooked.
Yeah.
But you hit the nail on the head. It's complete simplicity.
Yeah. Well, it's reminds me of, just speaking about India, I remember way back, the Beatles at the height of their fame went to, I should remember who the guru was in India, but
Maharishi Mahesh Yogi.
I'm glad you were able to pronounce his name. And
I'm a person of that generation.
and they went with all these deep and meaningful questions, and they were seeking the magic solution to how to deal with the state of consciousness they were in with the fame. And he just said, be yourselves. Just be yourself.
Yeah. My guru was exactly from that. His name was Swami Sham, and his simplicity and inclusiveness was profound, because he would say that he would never have disciples. He only had would-be masters, would-be gurus, because that's who we are. We don't follow, we find it within, because the word guru in Sanskrit, gu means ignorance or darkness, and ru means remover. So the word guru, it's not a person, it's that one who brings the light.
Yeah.
Who removes the darkness. So it's become a personification, but we have to know that our own self is our guru.
Yes, but we're in an era, well, probably always have been, of false gods, and that we set up people to be the great, and we follow, and we then
it's not that we don't need those things. Like if you're studying to be a doctor, it's not that you need your teachers. Like, these are very important things, but what you have to remember is, without you, none of this would happen.
Yeah.
So the importance of a teacher is absolute. It's very important, and a genuine teacher. But you have to remember that if you don't learn anything, what's the point?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. We will definitely chat again. Just finally, Shelley, you live in India, right?
I do.
Do
I come and
people,
go. I'm from Canada. Sorry?
so do people, do the young guys play cricket on every corner?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. In fact, yes, I've met a few cricket players when I've been in either Delhi or Chandigarh.
I
In the
just
rest,
love the
very
passion
exciting.
Indians have for cricket. I mean, Himali and her husband love cricket, and it's just it's a passion that you know, when you hear it, it's there's nothing more passionate in India, is there, than cricket?
Yes.
Well, look, great to chat, and the resources that you mentioned, your links and how people get in touch with you, will be in the resources page when we upload. And but for now, thank you very much, Shelley. It's been an absolute joy to chat to you. I've learned a lot, and I hope to chat to you again at some point in the future.
Thank you so much for this. I have really enjoyed talking to you because you're quite amazing. And I love your style. And I really enjoyed this so much. Thank you for this opportunity. And anytime, I'm welcome. I'd welcome the opportunity to speak again.
For those kind words, Shelley, you can definitely come back. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.